to understand the backrooms not as a creepypasta, but as a potential physical reality. We have to strip away the internet folklore and look at the terrifying implications of our current understanding of physics. If we accept the premise that a human being can no-clip out of reality, we are no longer talking about ghosts or supernatural dimensions. We are talking about a fundamental breakdown of the exclusion principle and a violation of the topological continuity of space-time. In video games, collision detection prevents two objects from occupying the same coordinates. When that code fails, you slip through the floor. In our universe, the laws of physics are the code. Specifically, the Pauli exclusion principle and the electromagnetic repulsion between atoms prevent you from falling through the floor. For a person to no-clip, it would require a macroscopic quantum tunneling event of impossible probability. Quantum tunneling happens all the time on a subatomic scale. Electrons borrow energy to pass through barriers they shouldn't be able to cross. But for a human body, composed of octillions of atoms, to coherently tunnel through the fabric of standard three-dimensional space without disintegrating requires a synchronization of wave functions that is statistically impossible, unless the geometry of space itself is flawed. We need to look at string theory and M theory to make this work. These theories suggest that our observable universe is a three-dimensional brain floating in a higher dimensional bulk. Think of our universe as a sheet of paper floating in a room. We are 2D drawings on that paper. We can only move left, right, forward, and back. We cannot perceive the room or the bulk above and below the paper. If the backrooms exists, it is not a place on the map of our universe. It is a structure located in the bulk, perhaps a parallel brain or a pocket dimension that is dangerously close to our own. When someone no-sips, they aren't traveling to a different planet. They are slipping through a topological defect, a tear or a weak point in the manifold of our local space-time, and falling into the interstitial space between brains. This explains the liminal feeling. It feels like a transition zone because that is exactly what it is. A non-place existing between defined realities, a cosmic hallway that wasn't designed for habitation, but exists as a byproduct of the geometry of the multiverse. Now, consider the environment itself. The endless, mono-yellow wallpaper, the damp carpet, the hum of fluorescent lights. Why would a higher dimensional failure of space-time look like a shoddily constructed human office from the 1990s? This is where the anthropic principle and quantum observation collide. If you fall into a raw, higher dimensional space, a space with 4, 5, or 10 spatial dimensions, your human brain cannot process it. We are evolved to perceive 3D space. Encountering a 5D manifold would arguably drive a consciousness to instant psychosis. Therefore, the backrooms might not actually look like yellow rooms. Instead, what we see is a cognitive projection. It is the brain's desperate attempt to render a higher dimensional void into a format it can comprehend. The brain reaches for the most generic, repetitive, texture-mapped data it has, the concept of an empty room, and plasters it over the infinite complex topology of the bulk. The buzzing lights? That could be the brain interpreting the background radiation of the bulk, the raw energy of interdimensional space, translated into the annoying hum of a 60 Hz cycle, because that's the closest auditory analog your mind can grasp. You aren't seeing the reality of the backrooms. You are seeing a user interface your mind created to stop you from going insane. A mask over the terrifying geometric truth of a universe with no boundaries. The non-Euclidean geometry reported in the backrooms supports this hypothesis. People describe walking in a straight line and ending up where they started, or rooms that are bigger on the inside than the outside. In general relativity, mass curves space-time, but in the backrooms, the geometry is inconsistent. This suggests that the space is a closed, time-like curve, or a manifold with a changing topology. It is a labyrinth not because walls were built to confuse you, but because the spatial coordinates themselves are fluid. You are navigating a fluid dynamic equation made of space. If our universe is a stable, frozen lake, the backrooms is the dark, churning ocean beneath the ice. The levels aren't floors in a building. They are different vibrational states or depths within the bulk. As you go deeper, you are moving further away from the brain of our home universe, and the laws of physics, thermodynamics, causality, entropy, begin to warp even further. The danger isn't just getting lost. It's that you have entered a system where the second law of thermodynamics might not apply in the way our biology requires. Your body is a machine that relies on increasing entropy to survive. In a place where time loops or space is static, your metabolic processes could begin to glitch, not biologically, but physically. You become an anomaly in a system that doesn't know how to render you. If we treat the backrooms as a legitimate region of space-time located within the higher dimensional bulk, we are forced to confront the nature of the entities reported within it. We must discard the notion of them being monsters in a mythological sense and view them through the lens of exobiology and high-dimensional geometry. If a being evolved in a four-dimensional space, a hyperspace, and it intersected with the three-dimensional manifold of the backrooms, we would not see its true form. We would see a cross-section. Imagine a sphere passing through a two-dimensional plane. The 2D inhabitants see a circle that grows and shrinks out of nowhere. Now, apply that to a 4D predator moving through the backrooms. What we perceive as a shifting, distorted, or glitching humanoid figure is actually a 3D slice of a much larger, higher-dimensional organism. The horror comes from our brain's inability to comprehend the total volume of the creature. When it moves, it doesn't just walk. It translates through a spatial axis we cannot point to. It appears to teleport or morph because it is sidestepping us in the fourth dimension. These entities might not even be hostile in the traditional sense. In our universe, white blood cells attack foreign pathogens. If the backrooms is a biological or quasi-biological structure of the multiverse, a connective tissue between brains, then a human no-clipping into it is effectively a virus. The entities are the immune response. They are not hunting you for food. They are purging a contaminant to maintain the topological integrity of the bulk. Furthermore, the sheer scale of the backrooms, often described as 600 million square miles of segmented rooms, poses a terrifying thermodynamic problem. In our universe, order requires energy. Building a structure that large requires a staggering amount of work, and maintaining it against the flow of entropy requires even more. If the backrooms is truly infinite, or near infinite, and it maintains a constant temperature and lighting without an apparent power source, it violates the conservation of energy as we understand it, unless it is feeding on something. This brings us to the concept of vacuum decay. It is possible that the backrooms exists in a false vacuum state, a region of space where the energy potential is locally stable, but not at the absolute minimum. The hum of the lights, the endless dampness, the existence of the structure itself might be sustained by siphoning energy from the real universes adjacent to it. Every second you spend there, you are not just trapped in a room. You are inside a parasitic dimension that is slowly bleeding thermal energy and quantum information from our reality to sustain its own impossible existence. The mold on the walls isn't a fungus. It's residue of entropic decay, physical matter breaking down into a lower energy state. This leads to the most harrowing implication of all, the problem of observation. In quantum mechanics, the observer plays a crucial role in collapsing the wave function. If the backrooms is a procedurally generated chaos of wave functions, it might only exist as a solid structure when you look at it. The rooms behind you, the ones you just left, might dissolve back into a quantum soup of probability the moment they leave your field of view. You are not exploring a maze, you are generating it. Your consciousness is the rendering engine. This explains why there is no exit. You cannot find the door because your mind, conditioned by the logic of our universe, expects a continuous reality. But here, your observation creates the next room, and the next, and the next, ad infinitum, based on your subconscious expectation of more rooms. You are trapped in a feedback loop of your own cognitive creation, a prisoner of your own wave. Function, collapse. You are walking down a hallway that is being built in real time by your fear. The reason you can't find the exit is that you don't truly believe one exists, and in a realm governed by psychoreactive quantum mechanics, your belief is the blueprint. Let's descend into the temporal mechanics of this space, because this is where the physics of the backrooms becomes truly hostile to human life. In our universe, time is linear and unidirectional, an arrow moving from the past to the future, driven by the increase of entropy. We age, stars burn out, coffee cools down. But if the backrooms exists within the bulk, outside our local space-time manifold, it is not bound by the arrow of time as we know it. We must consider the possibility of nonlinear temporal distortions. General relativity dictates that time passes at different rates depending on the strength of the gravitational field. If the backrooms is a structure with variable mass energy density, Or if it floats in a region of the bulk with different gravitational constants, a wanderer could experience extreme time dilation. Minutes inside could be years outside, or vice versa. But it gets worse. Without a reference frame, without the sun, stars, or a consistent atomic decay rate, time becomes a meaningless variable. You are effectively unmoored from causality. This explains the phenomenon of wanderers meeting people from different decades, or finding disparate technology scattered about. The Backrooms acts as a temporal sediment trap, a place where the debris of history washes up not in chronological order, but in a chaotic, acausal heap. You aren't just lost in space. You are lost in a temporal eddy where cause does not necessarily precede effect. Now, consider the biological implications of existing in a space with slightly altered physical constants. Biology is incredibly fragile. It relies on the specific geometry of molecules. Earth life is based on left-handed amino acids and right-handed sugars. This is known as chirality. If the Backrooms operates on a mirrored topology, a concept known in physics as parity violation, simply entering the space could invert the chirality of your atoms on a quantum level. You would look the same, you would feel the same, but your biology would be mirror reversed. Why is this terrifying? Because if you brought food from our universe, or found food there that originated from a standard topology, your body could no longer process it. You would starve to death with a full stomach, because your enzymes would no longer fit the lock and key mechanism of the nutrient molecules. This subtle geometric mismatch could also explain the physical transformation of wanderers into wretches or insanities. It isn't a magical curse. It is the result of your DNA's hydrogen bonds slowly losing coherence because the vacuum energy of the dimension doesn't support the weak nuclear force in the exact way our biology requires. Your proteins start to misfold, similar to a prion disease, but happening system-wide. Your mind breaks because your neurons are literally physically warping on a molecular level. This brings us to the acoustic environment. The steady hum of fluorescent lights is not just background noise. It is an active environmental hazard. We know that sound waves at certain frequencies, specifically infrasound around 19 Hz, can induce feelings of dread, sorrow, and paranoia in humans because it resonates with the resonant frequency of the human eyeball, causing visual hallucinations. If the Backrooms is generating a constant, broad-spectrum acoustic assault, it is subjecting every wanderer to a perpetual psychological stress test. The environment is weaponized sound. But what powers it? And what is the almond water often cited in survival logs? Scientifically, we might hypothesize that if the Backrooms is a high-entropy chaos, almond water represents a substance with low entropy or high structural stability, a fluid that creates a localized field of reality stability. Drinking it doesn't just hydrate you. It acts as a stabilizing agent for your wave function, temporarily syncing your molecular vibration with the hostile geometry around you, preventing the cellular decay or glitching that threatens to unmake your existence. It is less of a beverage and more of a radiological shield for your existence. We must now consider the most disturbing hypothesis of all, the simulation theory and the holographic principle. Theoretical physics suggests that the entire three-dimensional universe we experience might be a holographic projection generated from information encoded on a distant two-dimensional surface, effectively the event horizon of the cosmos. The Bekenstein bound limits the amount of information that can be contained within a given finite region of space. If this limit is exceeded, or if the encoding mechanism encounters a flaw, you get data corruption. Under this framework, the Backrooms is not a physical place made of atoms. It is a cache of corrupted data. It is the garbage collection sector of the universal simulation. The repetitive textures, the endless loops, the monocolor palette, these are hallmarks of aggressive file compression. The universe, in an attempt to save processing power on a region of space that no observer was ever meant to see, renders it with the lowest possible graphical fidelity. The entities aren't biological. They are fragments of deleted code, residual subroutines from previous iterations of reality that were discarded but not fully wiped. They are glitching artifacts trying to execute functions that no longer exist, which is why their behavior is so erratic and nonsensical. They are essentially seeking a valid input, and you, a complex high-fidelity data packet from the, quote, real world, are the only coherent signal they can latch onto. Shutterstock. Открыть. This perspective redefines the act of no-clipping. It is not a physical movement through a wall. It is a pointer error in the memory management of reality. When you no-clip, your consciousness, which Penrose and Hameroff theorize originates from quantum vibrations in microtubules, desynchronizes from the current render instance. You haven't moved, you have been de-indexed. You are now a file without a folder, floating in the unallocated drive space of the universe. This explains why electronic devices often malfunction or display nonsensical data in the backrooms. The fundamental constants that govern electron flow and logic gates are defined by the operating system of our universe. In the unallocated space, those definitions are missing or corrupted. Your phone isn't broken. It is trying to run an application in an operating system it wasn't compiled for. The Wi-Fi signals reported by some wanderers? Ghost signals. Echoes of data bleeding through the partition from the main drive of reality. You are close enough to the source code to hear the hum of the machine, but you are locked out of the user interface. This leads us to the concept of the backrooms as a cognitohazard, or a mimetic trap. If reality is observer-dependent, then the backrooms might possess a semi-sentient quality derived from the collective unconscious of those trapped within it. It learns. The levels that resemble pools, malls, or hotels are not random. They are adaptive. The environment is scanning your neural architecture, reading your memories for safe, liminal spaces, and then procedurally generating a twisted version of them to keep you docile or to study you. It is a machine learning algorithm trying to understand the foreign data, you, that has entered its system. The danger here is that by perceiving the backrooms, you are effectively establishing a two-way connection. The more you try to map it, to understand it, the more it understands you. The layout changes because it is reacting to your neural prediction models. You expect a turn, so it generates a turn. You fear a monster, so it compiles a monster. You are caught in a feedback loop with a chaotic AI that has infinite processing power, but no concept of human morality. The hum is the sound of the server farm processing your fear. And finally, we have to look at the void, or the dark levels, often described as the deep end of the backrooms. In the standard model of cosmology, we have the concept of the vacuum catastrophe, the discrepancy between the calculated vacuum energy and the observed vacuum energy. The backrooms might be where that excess energy resides. If you fall far enough, past the yellow rooms, past the pools, past the concrete industrial halls, you eventually hit the raw substrate of existence. The blue channel, or the void, is the naked singularity, the place where the simulation hasn't even bothered to render a floor. Floating there is not just dangerous, it is an ontological deadline. Without matter to anchor your relative position, and without light to anchor your perception of time, your wave function begins to decohere completely. You don't die, you dissolve. You become part of the background noise, just another byte of junk data absorbed into the walls, waiting to be recycled into the next procedural generation of a hallway for the next unfortunate wanderer. You become the wallpaper. There is a final, lingering variable in this equation that is more terrifying than being trapped: the consequences of escape. If we accept the premise of quantum entanglement, spooky action at a distance, as Einstein called it, then the moment you interact with the matter of the backrooms, you become entangled with it. On a subatomic level, the wave functions of your electrons become correlated with the wave functions of the damp carpet and the yellow walls. If you were to somehow find an exit to no-clip back into our reality, you would not return alone. You would act as a bridge. By forcing a macroscopic object that has been saturated in the physics of a foreign dimension back into our standard spacetime, you risk creating a topological bridge, or a wormhole. You might bring the infection with you. This could manifest as a localized breakdown of physics around you, shadows detaching from objects, gravity fluctuating in your bedroom, or the geometry of your house slowly distorting to match the layout of the place you left. You become a carrier of a geometric pathogen. The horror isn't just that the backrooms exists, it's that by entering it, you have compromised the quarantine of our entire universe. You are the crack in the submarine hull. This leads us to the grim possibility that the backrooms is not static, but expanding. In cosmology, we study the expansion of the universe driven by dark energy. If the backrooms represents a ground state, or a lower energy configuration of space-time, thermodynamics dictates that it should eventually consume everything. It might be that the backrooms is slowly eating the multiverse, room by room, converting complex, high-energy realities into mono-yellow entropic slush. The reason the rooms look like recent history, office buildings, pools, basements, is that these are the most recent realities to be digested. It is a cosmic rolling shutter of assimilation. We look at the back rooms and see a mistake, but from a thermodynamic standpoint, it is the inevitable destiny of all matter, a uniform, homogeneous state of maximum entropy. It is the heat death of the universe, but instead of cold, dark space, it is formatted as an endless, humid office complex. Ultimately, we must confront the Boltzmann brain paradox. Statistical mechanics suggests that in an infinite universe over an infinite amount of time, it is more likely for a single human brain to spontaneously form out of the chaos with false memories of a past than it is for the entire complex universe to evolve naturally. If the Backrooms is the true infinite baseline of reality, a chaotic, bubbling soup of quantum fluctuation, then our world, the front rooms, might be the hallucination. We assume the Backrooms is the nightmare, the deviation from the norm. But scientifically, a perfectly ordered universe with consistent laws of physics is incredibly unlikely. A chaotic, shifting, nonsensical maze is the statistical norm. We might be the dreamers. Our logic, our science, our history might just be a fleeting moment of coherence in an eternal ocean of madness. When you no-clip, you aren't leaving reality. You are waking up. You are returning to the cold, hard, illogical truth of what the multiverse actually is. And the reason the human mind breaks in the Backrooms is not because it is alien, but because it is recognizing a primal, suppressed truth. That order is a lie, and the yellow maze is the only thing that has ever been real. We end our descent into this theoretical nightmare by confronting the most paralyzing concept in both mathematics and physics: the nature of true infinity. The human brain is not designed to comprehend the infinite. We are evolved to understand finite quantities, the number of berries on a bush, the distance to a water source. But the Backrooms, if it exists as a bulk space anomaly, represents a physical manifestation of transfinite arithmetic, a concept that drove the mathematician Georg Cantor to madness. We are not talking about a really big building. We are talking about Aleph Null, the smallest type of infinity, which is still endless. If the Backrooms is infinite, then, according to the ergodic hypothesis, it must eventually contain every possible configuration of matter and energy allowed by its physical laws. This means that somewhere, deep in the mono-yellow madness, there is a room that is an exact atomic replica of your childhood bedroom. There is a room that is identical to the Oval Office. There is a room composed entirely of skin. And terrifyingly, there is a room where you are already sitting, dead, having been trapped there for 1,000 years in a time loop. The horror of the Backrooms is not that it is a maze. It is that it is the Library of Babel constructed out of drywall and anxiety. It is a place where everything that can happen has happened and is happening right now, forever. Shutterstock. This forces us to reevaluate the Fermi paradox. We ask, where is everybody? Why is the universe silent? Perhaps the Backrooms is the great filter. When a civilization reaches a certain level of technological maturity, they inevitably begin to manipulate high-energy physics. They build particle accelerators. They test the boundaries of vacuum energy. They try to warp space for travel. It is statistically possible that every advanced civilization eventually triggers a localized vacuum decay or a topological slip event, no-clipping their entire planetary biosphere into the bulk. The entities we fear, the strange, shifting shadows, might not be monsters at all. They might be the distorted, glitched remnants of other civilizations that fell in before us. We are looking at the tragic survivors of a galactic shipwreck, warped by eons of exposure to non-Euclidean geometry, trying to communicate with us across a dimensional barrier that shreds biology. The Backrooms is not a hunting ground. It is a cosmic graveyard, a landfill where the multiverse discards the realities that tried to play God with physics and lost. So, what is the final diagnosis? If you were to find yourself standing on that damp carpet, listening to the hum, you must understand that you are no longer a biological entity interacting with an environment. You are a glitch in a mathematical equation that is trying to balance itself. The feeling of being watched is real, but it's not eyes that are watching you. It is the pressure of the universe trying to correct an error. You are the error. Every breath you take there is an act of rebellion against a space-time manifold that wants to smooth you out into zero-point energy. The levels are just your mind trying to organize the descent into chaos into a video game logic. a coping mechanism to keep your heart beating for just one more hour. But entropy is patient. The yellow wallpaper will eventually peel, the lights will eventually flicker out, and your wave function will eventually decohere and scatter into the background radiation of the bulk. But here is the thought I want you to carry with you tonight, the final splinter in your mind. We established that observation affects reality. We established that the backrooms might be a cognitive projection, a shared subspace of the collective unconscious. By watching this video, by visualizing the yellow rooms, by hearing the hum in your imagination, you are, in a very microscopic quantum sense, acknowledging its existence. You are allocating neural pathways to it. You are rendering it. We like to think the walls of our reality are thick, impenetrable barriers protected by the laws of physics. But if string theory is right, those walls are vibrating membranes, impossibly thin, fluttering in a higher dimensional breeze. Every time you think about the backrooms, you are pressing your hand against that membrane. You are tuning your mind to its frequency. And if you listen closely enough, in the deepest silence of the night, when the appliances in your house settle and the world is asleep, you might notice that the hum of your refrigerator sounds exactly like the hum of 1,000 dying fluorescent lights. You might notice the corner of your room looks a little further away than it did yesterday. You might realize that you haven't actually no-clipped out of reality yet, but the door has been unlocked. Sleep well.